When you think of all the health professionals we've stolen from overseas over the years here in Britain, it's quite
Auto drive now enabled.
People are just coming here to try to get an appointment with their local doctor.
Yes, Andy, certainly someone who came from the expanded arm of the empire when Britain was still reaching out rather than... in on itself. Most of us just come here to visit our stuff in the museums. All European ambassadors after a spy scandal. I think this is probably a good thing because British foreign politicians are always putting their foot in their mouths. How much worse can they do if they're not there? I mean, by definition, the fact that there's a spy scandal means that they were terrible spies. The point of spies is that there's never a spy scandal.
Auto drive now
enabled. Let's give credit
enabled.
to all the spies that haven't been in scandals and therefore might as well not exist.
Well, they've arrested those German spies in that SIRS crackdown on the illegals in Hackney. And
Auto drive now
I
disabled.
think that's a sad thing. I think I used to think of Germans as quite scary, but that was because I've been watching World War II movies where the Germans all have English accents. They speak in that very, precise way. It's very, we have ways of making you talk. And now Germans all have that American accent where it's all like, oh, welcome to the party. We're having a really nice time. They're much friendlier Germans. Let them stay.
Well, that's all today, Bunksters. Remember, it's not as bad as it seems. Honestly. I hope. Until next time. Bye-bye.
From Robert Peel's Bobbies to our first radio cars, we've been here to serve this city. And while times might have changed, our dedication hasn't. The Metropolitan Police, who've been protecting London since 1829.
Reported in your area, potentially armed and hostile. Got it. Watch for hostiles, people.
Coming up today on The Upload, we're talking about Sky Larson, the enigmatic founder of Broker Tech. Everyone knows her name, but no one knows too much about her. And we only really see her these days as a hologram. She was pretty young when she launched. Best known for
Auto drive now enabled.
G-Man.
Auto drive now disabled.
And it's really blown all the other AIs that were created out of the water. And I think that what Sky Larson's done with Bagley is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really imagine the optic without it. But what do you know about Sky Larson herself?
Not a lot, other than that she's actually pretty incredible. I've followed her work for a long time, and she's always been a pretty private person. I know that she supposedly grew up in the countryside, but there isn't actually that much more we know about her other than this tech that she's put out into the world.
I've always found it a bit creepy that she's so obsessed with this idea of transhumanism.
Why wouldn't you be? When you've got a mind as amazing as Sky's, why wouldn't you want to take what you've got and actually augment it by working with technology, by improving your physical self, changing your body and the world around you, implementing more technology to extend your life and really sort of extend human capabilities?
You sound pretty much in love with Sky Larson, I have to say.
I can't comment on that, but I am a big fan of her work. She's been one of these people that has transformed the world around us, and just watching how her mind works from afar is pretty incredible, because some of what the technology she's introduced has changed how we all live our lives, and Bagley has been this really incredible assistance to humanity as a whole. Did I ever tell you that I actually interviewed Sky Larson once?
Really? I thought she never spoke to the media or anything.
So this was a long time ago, back in the day when she was a little bit more accessible, and she was one of these people that just had an amazing presence. You were inspired by her very being, and she was just incredibly talented and knowledgeable, and one of possibly the best living people that I've ever met.
I'm not sure you're being too objective there. I mean, I imagine she's not very likable as a person.
She obviously despises humanity in some ways. I think she believes that becoming Data is preferable to being human. She's one of these people who's extremely methodical in everything that she does, and she does everything to perfection and really tries to change the world around her and make it a better place for us to live in.
If you say so.
This is London Calling. You're listening to Buccaneer, your pirate podcast source for what they don't want you to know. I'm Tash, and this time we're giving a special shout out from us to the boys and girls at the Signal and Intelligence Response Service, better known as SIRS. Why not? They're going to be listening anyway. They're listening to everything. But don't worry, we're not going to say anything bad about a massive, unaccountable spy organization that uses its powers to stifle dissent and shut down free speech. Instead, we're going to look at how SIRS became so powerful. And as usual, we'll keep everyone's names and locations secret, so SIRS doesn't come looking for them. Ian was a veteran political writer and podcaster back in the days of pre-crisis Britain.
Is the world we're living in now fascist? Well, this is what fascism is. It is the complete and total control of the individual. The desire to basically say to the individual, nothing in your life basis, you are now part of the whole, part of the nation, and the only meaning that you will find in your life is to become part of the nation. What is a nation? Nation doesn't mean anything, right? The nation is basically just encapsulated by the leader that takes over, that claims that he, has this sort of access to the soul of the country, to the soul of the people. He never does, it's just a myth. But that's what they go for. And on that basis, they take the right to control every aspect of your life, from who you talk to where you eat, to where you go to hang out with your friends. And what we're seeing now is a contemporary iteration of this process where you get corporations and the state operating in tandem, basically molded into one another. But that isn't that rare.
Auto drive now
Exactly
enabled.
the same thing in Nazi Germany. You look at the concentration camps that operated in Nazi Germany, there were private companies in those camps making use of that slave labor. Fascism often works with corporations, and it's doing the same now. That's the way in which they track what you do. That's the way in which they track who you talk to. They operate as each other's proxies.
Charles is an expert in the dark arts of surveillance who worked to set up democratic media in post-communist states. How did it go so wrong in Britain?
Auto drive now disabled.
We're looking at all the wrong things when we look at Britain's crisis. There's a lot of concentration on data and how that's been used and manipulated. And what we haven't looked at is the power structures and the profit that lies behind this. For example, if we examine what actually happened, there's a company that's really, very interested boards and making it easy to provide visas for investment and so on. And historically, throughout the world, they've been working with this big data manipulation company in order to overthrow governments. And then suddenly all the chickens came home to roost. Nobody could find any receipts for what was paid for. Nobody could figure out how things were done, but everybody had a feeling that something really stunk, and they couldn't figure it out. And yet it was standing there in their face the whole time. There's a couple of different ways that we got where it is that we are. One, you have a lot of smaller organizations, smaller power groups, companies as well, who are bending things just a little. We'll compromise a little bit, we'll bend the rules a little bit, and try to achieve what it is that we hope to achieve that's good for us. And if you add all of that up, what you end up with is a big wall moving in a big way, from a lot of little buttons being pushed. But also there's this other thing that's going on here, is the gathering of data and the analysis of data has authoritarianism contained within its DNA. It is by and it has been used in that way.
How does big data look into our lives? James covered it for the Crisis Press.
We're starting to see the merger of private data and that with data held by the state into what are called social credit systems. This is where every aspect of your behaviour is monitored and totted up by a central system to sort of score you as a person, a bit like a credit card, but predicated on all of your behaviour rather than just the money you're spending. And this can have profound impact. We're starting to see systems emerge which will punish you and stop you from doing things in society based on your behaviours. And this can be as trivial as if you jaywalk, if you cross the road in the wrong place, you might lose points. If you do some community activities or help your neighbours, you might earn points. And then this can be used to sort of evaluate you as a person. And this could mean, for example, better travel privileges, being able to travel first class, or being
Is the new DLC out?
to not being able to travel at all. These systems are very real and
Auto drive now
the
enabled.
data that is now held on us.
So if your ears are burning and you think someone might be watching you, you're probably right. They're watching all of us. I'm Tash and you've been listening to Buccaneer. Keep listening, keep sharing the show and keep it encrypted. They're watching us.
Not as of yet.
From Robert Peel's
Nice
Bobbies
car.
to our first radio
Auto drive
cars,
now disabled.
we've been here to serve this city. And while times might have changed, our dedication hasn't. The Metropolitan Police. We've been protecting London since 1829.
You're listening to The Bug.
May cause nausea, vomiting and headaches. Hello Britain, this is The Bug, the show that holds up a mirror to the world and smashes itself on the head with it in despair. I'm Andy, joining me, as always, Alice, and...
I deny everything.
It's just a good state of existence. Some good news, at last. There are no medicine shortages, according to the government, none at all. There have been various allegations about that. It turns out they are all fake news, trademark. There are none. There are no shortages of medicine. Don't take it from me. I'm not a medical supplier. Take it from our beloved government. It's fine. In fact, I'm going to read between the lines here. Actually, so there's probably there's too much medicine, if anything. Just medicines. You can't move for medicine. In fact, just this morning, I tried to walk from cornflakes into a bowl for breakfast and out-tumbled a 12-month course of immunosuppressants.
Go to the cast aisle.
Steroids, an anti-retrofrontal.
Auto drive now enabled.
Estrogen spermatotropic fruit pastels.
Auto drive
People
now
claiming their
disabled.
medical shortages are probably high on lots of medicine that they've been given. I, for one, believe that there are no medical shortages, Andy. Just last week, I went in with a broken arm and they suggested it might just be extreme period pain. They prescribed me a drink of water and an astrology chart.
I think we can't be too far away from them just prescribing stiff upper lip like they do with the kids.
My uncle had a leg removed due to diabetes. They halved his insulin because they said there was less of him to be diabetic.
So, anyway, people don't believe what you read or hear about there not being enough medical drugs to go around. It's not true. It's hospital hogwash, it's pharmaceutical flim-flam, it's medical mendacity, it's Hippocratic humbug, it's nonsensical narcotic nincompoop. I think I've made the point. Do not believe the news telling you that we've run out of medicine, nor should you believe the empty shelves at the chemists. They're also lying. Do not believe your doctor saying, sorry, we're fresh out of that, you're going to have to eat a carrot and pretend. Do not believe your own cobweb-ridden medicine cabinet at home. It might look empty, but it's not, for it contains the only medicine any of us truly need. Stirring music, please, producer Chris. Freedom. The medicine of British freedom, and the analgesic knowledge that however ill you may be, we'll be keeping an eye on things for you.
I'm investing heavily in the placebo effect right now. You're listening to
Auto drive now enabled.
Wait to take this
I
down.
mean that because what is the first rule of the third millennium? If someone in power
Auto
tells
drive
something
now
is fake
disabled.
news, what is it? Correct. A 110% cast iron, tungsten-coated, granite-scented, cosmically immutable, scientifically unarguable fact. But surely that's the more important question for all these medicine freaks whinging on about feeling a bit poorly or having a fatal but curable illness and slowly dying unnecessarily is this. Do we actually need medicine? If you today got diagnosed with a potentially fatal illness, would you not look around at the nation that we've become and think, hey doc, put your life-saving treatment down, I'm going to take this free one-way bus out of here. Now hold that pillow over my face until the twitching stops.
I just don't think we should think of it in such a negative way. Don't think of it as a medicine diet, Andy. Think of it as a series of healthy lifestyle swaps. Swap out anti-inflammatories for antacids. Swap out the iron lung for the aluminium lung. Swap out MRI machines for Mary machines, which is just a lady called Mary telling you you're fine.
Obviously, critical shortages are as much part of our daily lives, our society and our culture today as things like football, music and complaining about the weather used to be in the old days. And, well, food shortages, yeah, we just learned to live with the day. And there's a lot of positives as well with all these food shortages. I mean, we were eating too much anyway. As a nation, the government's just helping us live healthier lifestyles. It's so hard to diet on your own, isn't it? You need the support of a friend or a loved one or a government or collapsing social infrastructure. Positive 2, meat.
Auto drive now enabled.
So we're actually rebuilding the polar ice caps every time we eat a scrap of lettuce. 3, positive 3, the human race had already cooked all the recipes it needed.
Auto drive now enabled.
We've done that. We can tick it off. We've done it. I was bored of food anyway. I've been
Cool.
all my life. If you've been doing the same thing 3 times a day, 4, sometimes 7, or even 8 times a day, you're bound to get bored of it. And also, final positive, no more meal times. Frees up all that extra time to appreciate
Auto drive now
hard work
disabled.
that Albion do to keep us all safe.
Well, as you say, Andy, people are drawn to novelty, and everyone's had breakfast once. Why you got to keep having it again and
Exactly.
again?
Boring, repetitive. There's enough of that in life. You are listening to the Buzz. Well, another story that has come to the fore recently is that all European imports have been banned for public health reasons, which is great news. I mean, at least we can get ill eating good, home-produced, locally sourced, British, industrially unsafe food. That's something we can all cling to. Public health reasons, those are curious words. Alice, I don't know, is that in case the public gets too healthy eating all that Mediterranean muck? Let's have British food for British tummies. Spelt, nettles, rabbit. That's all we need. That's all we need in the glory days. Everyone round to Nigel's for dinner, yum yum.
Who needs Italian olives when you can eat pickled rubber bands and a soup of regret? Who needs a nice cheese when you can eat a lukewarm, unspecified rat meat pie with 0 spices?
Sand, nettles, and bits of dead fox. That's all we needed to eat in the glory days. Let's make Britain great again. That's all from the Bug today. Good night, sleep tight, and make sure the bed bugs do bite.
It's a Aston Martin in a Jag.
This is London Calling. You're here with me, Tash, from Buckingham, your source for what they don't want you to know.
Auto drive now
In today's
enabled.
world, we've all had to get used to our every move being tracked by the optic on our temples, by the cameras around us, and with every click we make online. Seems like everything we do feeds the big data beast. Why are data giants like
Yeah.
Bloom so hungry to get hold of our private information and our metadata? What are they using it for? Will we ever have real private lives again? What is privacy in the digital world? And what happens when capitalism and
Auto
space
drive now
become one?
enabled.
As you know, we keep all names confidential on Buckingham. Speaking from a secure location, here's new technology strategist Charles, who worked all over the world trying to keep democracy strong in the face of the data assault.
If you have enough personal data on somebody, you're able to predict what it is that they're going to do. You can tell what they might be passionate about, but mostly you can tell what they fear. And if you can tell what someone fears, then you can manipulate them and you can move them in particular directions. Data
Auto
is
drive now
collected
disabled.
on citizens in every possible way. Data is collected through surveillance cameras. Data is collected from television sets. They don't even necessarily need to be super smart television sets. Data is collected from voter records. It's collected from how much power do you use in your house and how much water do you use in your house. else. In pre-crisis Britain, we got really used to all of our services being free. Everything suddenly became free that was digital. But what people forgot is that if you're not paying for it, then you're the product being sold.
If technology brings out the worst in capitalism, capitalism brings out the worst in technology. Senior academic Alfie tells us how big business repurposes big data.
Historically, what's happened, of course, is that people have traded their privacy for their convenience as smartphones and other kinds of technology came in and became mass-consumed, mass-used items and technological objects. Gradually, people were so attracted to the affordances of these technologies that privacy kind of retreated into the background and into a state we've got now where it's essentially gone. Having this access to this data makes huge tech companies like Blue so much more powerful than they would be otherwise, and not just in the obvious ways. Of course, there's a lot of worry and fear over what they can do with the data. They can track anyone, find anyone, see what every individual is doing at any point in time. But I think there's even deeper reasons why this data empowers these huge companies to control our society and make us do things. So lots of predictive technologies which are implemented by these tech giants. It's not only interested in knowing what we're going to do, but influencing the patterns of our movement. So technologies might suggest routes to use in the city, places to go, restaurants to go to, cafes to go to, music to listen to. And these suggestions are not just predicting what we might like to do, they're actually influencing the way citizens move, think, choose, and use their city as a space. So London has become a place where a small group of surveillance captive companies like Blue and control the movement.
Wow, that's something.
Are you taking a piss?
Yes, walk one. What? Arsehole! It's all right. Tosser!
Keep listening, keep fighting, and remember, nobody owns you but you.
When you think of your dream home, do you picture peace and quiet? With solar power, grey water recycling, and green walls, you'll get the freshness of countryside here in the heart of the city. We know you think green, you act green. So, when the doors close, you've earned the right to put other people's problems behind you. E-Flats. We make your apartment a showroom for your conscience.
This is London Calling. You're listening to me, Tash, on Buck. This time we're turning our focus back on the media to look at my former employer, the GBB. As we know, the broadcasting has been through a lot of changes since the Hassani government gave in to pressure from its corporate backers and privatised the corporation. Today, the GBB is a shadow of this former self. It's become a tool used by the government to circulate fake news and misinformation. So how did we get here? Where did it all go wrong? How can we tell when our national media has become state propaganda? Our experts speak on conditions of journalism for their own perspective. Here's disinformation and media expert Charles who's seen free broadcasters built up by journalists and torn down by demagogues all over the world.
So before the media fragmented, there was this voice of authority that was trusted and worthy of trust. Then what we ended up with is a really commercial model where whether you're talking about an app on a smart device or whether you're talking about a broadcaster, the most important thing was to keep you in that environment for the longest amount of time possible. And because that meant money in their pocket. And in order to do that, a couple of things happened. One was the use of manipulative techniques around behavioral economics, things that would just keep you scrolling, keep you listening, keep you looking for more information. The second is that kind of environment favors sensationalism. And so you got more sensational headlines and more sensational stories, and it didn't matter whether they were true or not. It just kept people in and it kept them in the loop. So we ended up in a situation where nobody trusted anything and nobody believed anything at all. And that is the perfect environment for an authoritarian voice to come in and say, no way, we are the truth. The ground for this environment really got created when we had suddenly authoritarian politicians everywhere. Anything that threatened them or they disagreed with, they would call it disinformation. That's disinformation. That's fake news. And again, we got in a situation where nobody really believed anything. And the trouble is if you were telling the truth, it's very hard to get your message to cut through all of the noise of all of the disinformation that's there. So like, you remember Out on the Edges, there was this story about when they would take a house by force, they would take any infants and they would crucify them. And that's a great, fantastic, viral story. And how do you counter that story? With the truth. The only way you can counter it is by saying, no, they didn't. And of course, no one wants to spread that story. No one wants to hear that story. They want to hear the sensationalism. They want to hear how people were victims of violence when in fact they weren't. Or they were victims of insurgent forces when in fact they weren't.
The news isn't neutral, it's a battleground. Here's media researcher and academic Alfie.
The media has, of course, been perhaps the key way in which governments have controlled and influenced their populations. So, totalitarian countries have typically used huge mainstream media outlets to sell one kind of news, one kind of biased news to its population. Of course, the media has always played this kind of key role in methods of state control. I think what's happening now is perhaps even more concerning, where previously in pre-crisis Britain we had perhaps more diverse voices in the media, but now with the GBB you're really only seeing one brand of news and therefore only getting one truth. So people end up with a very biased and controlled Of course, there's been many concerns and many problems, but in a way there were some positive things, because not all information was coming from one place, and so you'd have kind of far-right media outlets developing and then left-wing media outlets developing to combat those and kind of challenge the mainstream newspapers, TV stations, radios, and make sure people were questioning the validity and truth of the information they were receiving. So whilst there was the digital afforded more fake information, it also makes us suspicious and sceptical of information and makes us question the information we're getting. And I think in pre-crisis Britain it might not seem great at the time, but there was something positive about that there was a lot of distrust in the media and in the different kinds of truths that are being told. Whereas now I think you're seeing a return to a more traditional and older pre-digital sense, actually, of people just trusting what they're told, and that's why we have to be here with radio stations like this to challenge those conceptions. Most citizens feel pretty hopeless and unable to fight back against these kind of huge mainstream corporations that simply entrench and support the ideals and ideologies of the state. It can seem very hopeless indeed, but I think, the fact that you're out there listening, we're in here talking, shows that there is still a space to combat these false truths and disinformation that's being sold to us, and it's never possible really to completely shut down despite all the technologies that they have at their disposal and all the financial and corporate power and all the physical power, it's never quite possible to shut down people's desire to get to the truth and fight for their own ideologies and values. And you know, we're out here starting that task, so don't give up hope.
You've been listening to Buccaneer with me, Tash. We'll be back soon with more of what you'll never hear on the GBB. Keep listening, keep sharing, and keep resisting.
Buccaneer, this is the Bug. Hello, resistors, it's Bug time. Are you all sitting comfortably? No? Good. That's as it should be. This is the Bug. I'm Andy, and joining me is Alex, the latest localised to emerge from the corpse of the once free Britain. It's Alex.
What's our status of retrieval? Please advise.
Sniff around.
Such a very valuable bargain service of beating people up. Well, it's probably not quite as low as the figures suggest.
I don't know. I think they're probably right. Who has the opportunity to commit violent crime these days anyway? The moment you pick up a fruit knife, you get tasered by a robot policeman and deported for looking Bulgarian. It's a much more peaceful society. It's just much less of a society.
I want to know the details of the contracts. How is it on? Are they paid per dissonant duffed up? Is it in a set rate? What is that rate?
They certainly look like they're trying to get a quota of some kind.
Well, what is the set rate? Is it 99.95 cryptos bargain? It seems very reasonable indeed. I imagine they don't ask too much anyway, Alvin, because it's just so nice to get paid for doing your hobby anyway, isn't it? I imagine it doesn't even feel like work.
I mean, who needs violent crime anymore anyway? You know, you can just starve to death without even starting a gang war.
We do have to ask exactly what does the Prime Minister make of all this. Let's ask him. They pick up. Hello, you're through to number 10 Downing Street. Hello, is the Prime Minister there, please? Sorry, you've missed him. I'm afraid he's popped out for the decade. Oh, never mind. Is there anyone else I can talk to? Yes, of course. There's a shady cabal of vested interests who control him and prop him up in power. Great, I'll have a chat with them then.
Oh, Andy, remember when you could get away with prank calls without people coming round to your house to beat the shit out of you?
Oh, happy times.
You're listening to The Bug.
Did you think the Prime Minister will ever come back?
I don't think we've ever had a Prime Minister.
Well, that's a much more reassuring way of looking at things. What have we become? Alice, when you look at the state of our politics, we're supposed to have the mother of parliaments. Well, this is one mother that has emphatically abandoned her kids in the woods to be brought up by wolves. And let me tell you, that never works out like it does in the stories. Wolves are bad parents, unless you're a wolf, in which case they can do a job bringing you up as a wolf. Do not give your children to wolves. And do we actually own anything as a country now? Is there anything we haven't flogged off for profit? Oh, I think we've basically just become a homeopathic Britain. Diluted and diluted until there's barely a trace of the original Britain left. But some quackish lunatics insist it actually works better that way. It's total bullshit. Anything left? New on the Bug this week. A new feature. The Bug Off feature. The person who has most irritated us in Britain this week, we're going to tell to bug off, and to get things going, I'm going to nominate Big Nigel. Nigel Castle. Look, this is Britain. History tells us this place is a bastion of freedom. I'm just not sure that that kind of freedom should involve Big Nigel expressing his freedom to run a private army. I guess, historically, there is a precedent. The East India Company. That was a trading house with an army of 250,000 soldiers, which is a lot for a company. The Bug PLC has Alice with a water pistol, but crucially, compared with Albion, the East India Company didn't operate its $250,000 strong army in London. It did it a long way away, out of sight, out of mind. Anyone to nominate for the bug off, Alice?
I think today's bug off for me goes to my streaming service. I'm sick of being recommended things based on things I already like. The other day it recommended me to watch a reality TV competitive dating show set in a nude commune. Andy, I watched it and I liked it, and I do not want to be the kind of person who enjoys nude competitive reality television dating shows. I did not want to know that about myself. I have to go sit in the corner and cry.
That's it from the bug. Don't forget the live show that is so secret it is definitely not happening at the usual time and place this month. Definitely not, and definitely do not tell anyone not to come to it. It's definitely not happening. Usual time and place. Bye-bye.
God! Wake up!
Here at Star Roger, we want to wake you up before life tries to break you up. Now, that's the way to start the day. Star Roger. Wake up and experience the coffee.
You're listening to The Bug.
May cause nausea, vomiting and headaches. You're listening to The Bug, the Resistance comedy show brought to you by the Buccaneer Network. I'm Andy, joining me, as always, Alice.
I'm excited to be here. Apparently, the Resistance is not going well.
Again? Well, there has been some news about DedSec, the resistance and/or terrorist organisation, delete according to preference. Not preference, sorry, delete according to whether it will work with government SIRS, including the Kellys or Albion. According to a SIRS official, DedSec...
They don't know who they're messing with. Suspect reported in your area, potentially armed and hostile.
Had her appendix out. Oh, Andy, that's certainly
Control,
a real threat.
we're pursuing the suspect.
Me, trying to knock me out. Well, they call a scalpel and an anaesthetic, Gladys. Anyway, if SIRS officials say DedSec is dead and buried, I guess we have to assume that DedSec has never been stronger.
Control, I've lost the target.
I mean, sometimes I think, is there any hope? Do you still have hope?
I don't think I'm allowed to have hope. We're living in the self-selected, algorithmically designated information equivalent of a propaganda state, and every
Negative.
that
No
I've
sign
ever
of the
seen is
target
weaker
yet.
than the British pound. I feel like hope is an expensive thing to buy these days.
I mean, is it all totally pointless? What we can feel pointless. But then again, I've spent almost all of my life doing pointless things, like learning French and hoping for a better future. All completely pointless. But yeah, I've done them, so we might as well carry on. Is there a light?
Can't catch me.
What is that like? Is it an oncoming train? Well, no, it couldn't be. Obviously, that train would be late or cancelled. Is the light at the end of the tunnel a burning effigy of the concept of hope? Quite possibly. Is it the soul of Sky Larson imploding into its own vacuum? May well be that. Is it the ego of Nigel Cass that is now so big that it's sucked all the light in the universe into itself? I think that is most likely is that, but we'll never give up, Bug fans. This resistance will never die. And one day, we will again be free. Free from these technological chains, free to choose our own futures, free to live our own lives, free to waste our time watching people bake cakes and dance badly again. Those were the days. Before we go, time for a quick bug off. I'm going to nominate this week Sky Larson. Here at the Bug, we are all in favour of strong, powerful women. And in many ways, Sky is the ultimate feminist icon, proving that women can do just as abominably awful things to this planet as men. I mean, overall, Alice, I think we're still ahead as men, but you lot are catching up. Fair play to you. You are listening to The Bug.
You're listening to The Bug.
Nibbling away on the rotting carcass of a once free Britain. Hello, resistors, this is The Bug, and on today's show, Alice and I will be